On Christmas Eve, the man who'd slept beside me for 20 years locked me inside the walk-in freezer. But the sound that haunts me isn't the metal door slamming shut. It's the voice that whispered on the other side, a voice that wasn't his. I felt the click of the latch like a knife made of sound. Small, sharp, final. There was no warning, no hesitation, not even my name barked in a hurry. Just the firm shove of the door, and the silence that followed. A silence so cold, it felt made of the same material that was burning my skin. The first shock wasn't the cold sinking into my body. It was the certainty sinking into my soul. I wasn't a wife being protected. I was a problem being stored. Instinctively, I pressed my hands between my chest and the steel door, as if I could somehow hold back the feeling that the whole world was shrinking around me. But it wasn't the freezer that was tightening. It was the entire history of my marriage finally closing in on me. For years, I'd been carrying around a quiet kind of ice inside that house. Ice he always disguised as exhaustion, bad moods, just stress. Now I could see that cold for what it really was. A warning, a preview, a door that had been closing slowly for a long time, until it finally snapped shut. Ice doesn't create the cold. It just reveals what was already frozen on the inside. I only understood that sentence that night. I took a deep breath, feeling the razor-sharp air cut down my throat like I was inhaling glass. For a second, I thought about pounding on the door, screaming, begging. But something else rose up inside me, something even more terrifying than fear. The shame of realizing I was still hoping he'd turn back. Do you know what that is? To expect the same person who hurts you to be the one who saves you? Right there, surrounded by all that cold, I finally saw what I'd been doing for years. Waiting for warmth from a man who only knew how to deliver winter. I strained to hear anything outside, a footstep, a sigh, any hint of regret. But all I could hear was the distant thud of my own heart, trying to survive all by itself. And then, a sound that shouldn't have been there. Light footsteps, careful, moving toward the door. I held my breath, and the frozen air stayed lodged in my chest like a suspended blade. The person stopped. So close, I could hear the short, nervous breathing. And then she said, "He said you were supposed to stay quiet." I closed my eyes. That voice wasn't his. It wasn't anyone from the family. It was a woman's voice, soft, low, almost ashamed. In that moment, it felt like the ice seeped straight into my spine. Because I understood, without fully understanding yet, that I wasn't just locked in. I was being kept, managed, watched, like an inconvenient secret. My instincts snapped awake, sharp as a blade. My whole body switched over to listening. The freezer turned into a metal echo chamber, amplifying every sound, every word, every stretch of silence. The woman spoke again, her voice shaking like someone repeating a line they don't believe in. He said this was better. Better for who? Better why? Better for how long? My heart jolted painfully in my chest because I recognized that kind of language. It was the same justification Derek had used my entire life to reshape my world, always blaming my sensitivity, always insisting I was too much, too emotional, too heavy. Now he'd found someone else to repeat it back to me. The freezer, which had been just physical cold a moment ago, turned into something else, a living metaphor. A prison he'd been building long before that night. Year after year, look after look, silence after silence. My hand slid into the pocket of my apron, just needing to feel something that proved I was still there. My fingers brushed against metal. Something I'd forgotten was even there. The old key. The tiny internal lock key. The one Derek claimed he'd misplaced. In that instant, I felt something warm, a heat that didn't come from my body, but from a part of me I thought was gone. The part that still chose. I had a way out. I had a chance. I had a choice. And right then, the woman outside the door whispered another sentence, one that ripped everything wide open. "He said you weren't coming back." The freezer suddenly felt too small to hold the truth rising up inside me. I wasn't in there by accident. I wasn't in there because he snapped. I was in there because someone planned it. And the heart that hurt the most in that moment wasn't even mine. It was my daughter Maya's, because I thought of what he'd tell her, what she'd believe, how much work Derek had already put into painting me as the unstable woman of the family. There, in the cold, alone, in the dark, I finally admitted something to myself. The ice didn't kill me. The ice woke me up. And in that frozen vigil, I made a decision. Before I ever walked out of there, I would listen to everything. Every word, every lie, every fragment of the truth that had been hiding behind closed doors for years. Because that night wasn't just Christmas Eve. It was the night I would learn how to turn the lock from the inside. The truth is, that night in the freezer only looks like a shock to anyone on the outside. For me, after 20 years in that marriage, it was just the most brutal version of something that had been happening in silence for a long time. The ice had always been there. All that was missing was the slam of the door for me to finally see it. My life with Derek wasn't made of big fights, slammed doors, or broken dishes. It was made of tiny cracks, little omissions, quiet neglect. The kind of thing that eats through you slowly, with no alarms, like water dripping on stone until it punches through. We woke up in the same bed, but he rarely said good morning. We walked through the same rooms, but never in the same world. He always had something more important on his mind than me. On that Christmas Eve, all of that was there, just wrapped in holiday lights. I just didn't know it was foreshadowing. The day started like every other painful December. Me cooking alone, me decorating alone, me trying to keep a tradition alive that only existed because I refused to let it die. The smell of turkey filled the house, and for a second, I tried to believe it meant something, that it still meant family. But Derek walked past the kitchen without even looking at me. All he said was, "Don't overdo it, Naomi. You always make a big deal out of these holidays." One line. Simple. Crushing. Do you know what hurts most? It's not the criticism itself. It's realizing the person you live with has no idea or doesn't care how much of yourself you pour into the little things. I kept stirring pots, but inside, something wilted. It felt like I was always fighting for space with his indifference and losing. A rigged fight between the love I gave and the ice he gave back. And as if his coldness wasn't enough, there was always the chorus behind him. Vivian, my mother-in-law. A few days before, she'd told me with that sweet, condescending smile she loved to use on me, "Men don't like all this fuss, Naomi. You make everything so complicated. Derek deserves some peace." I never understood why his peace apparently required my erasure, or why she spoke to me like I was the hired help, not his wife. The worst part was watching how much of that seeped into Maya. The way she started repeating phrases that weren't hers. The way she looked at me with eyes that weren't hers. The way she carried judgments she hadn't earned but had absorbed. That afternoon, she walked into the kitchen, clutching her phone like a shield. "Mom, Dad said my trip is already taken care of. Can you confirm it?" I told her I didn't know anything about it, that money was tight, that we'd have to talk it through. She rolled her eyes, that same eye roll I'd seen from Vivian for years. "With you, it's always a problem. With him, everything's easy." That hurt. Kids don't know how sharp certain words are, but mothers do. We feel it. We store it. I watched her walk out, leaving me there with the smell of garlic and rosemary and a silence heavier than any walk-in freezer. That was my life. Constantly trying to prove I was a good mom, a good wife, a good woman, always trying to hold the house together so it wouldn't collapse. And the cruelest part? No one saw it. No one thanked me. No one even noticed. Derek spent most of the day shut in his office, laughing quietly at texts he'd clear as soon as I came near. And back then, I still felt guilty for being suspicious, as if my intuition was the problem, not his behavior. When his shirt came home smelling like a sweet perfume I didn't own, he told me it was a new detergent at the dry cleaner. When I saw a notification from a woman's name disappear too quickly, he said it was work stuff. Whenever I came closer and he flipped his phone face down, he would sigh and say, "You're overreacting, Naomi. You're so emotional." That was his favorite way to shut me down. Emotional. Like it was a defect, or a diagnosis, or the excuse to explain away everything he did. And me, out of love, exhaustion, fear of breaking my family, I swallowed it. That Christmas Eve should have been a day of warmth, laughter, togetherness. For me, it was just another day where the house swallowed me whole while everyone else called it normal. The only person who still brought any warmth into that season was Gabriel, my childhood friend, the one who'd been leaving a sweet bread on my porch every Christmas since his mother passed. A small gesture, almost nothing if you didn't know the story. But to me, it was proof there were still people in the world who cared without wanting anything back. And Derek hated it. Hated Gabriel. Hated anything that reminded me I deserved tenderness. That whole setup, the coldness, the distant daughter, the mother-in-law dripping poison into every relationship, was the canvas for what came next. Because before Derek locked me in the freezer, he'd been locking me into paperwork. Life insurance is just a formality, Naomi. I'll handle it. You don't need to worry about that. Too much bureaucracy for you. And I believed him, trusted him, shrank myself to fit the version of me he'd created. That night, inside that freezer, with my heart thudding too fast and my breath coming in short bursts, I finally understood something that burned like hot metal. He didn't start killing my life that Christmas. He only finished what he'd been doing slowly. And still, ironically, it was in that freezer that something inside me began to thaw. The fear, the automatic obedience, the way I always tried to make excuses for him. For the first time, I started seeing just how much of myself I'd lost trying to hold together a family that only existed on their side of the story. When I heard that woman's voice outside the door, that voice that wasn't mine, wasn't my daughter's, wasn't my mother-in-law's, I knew there had been a third person in my story for a long time. And the freezer wasn't the beginning. It was just the final warning. Right there, a question formed inside me. If I survive this, who am I going to become? I had no idea that once I started following that thread, I'd find something even uglier than betrayal. A thread that began long before the freezer. When that woman's voice spoke for the first time outside the freezer, soft, trembling, almost childish, something inside me cracked and, at the same time, awakened. It wasn't the voice of someone who wanted to hurt me directly. It was the voice of someone else he had manipulated, molded, bent the same way Derek had done to me for years. And I recognized that pattern instantly. Inside that freezing metal box, a truth settled into my bones that should have shattered me, but strangely, it grounded me. He wasn't just cruel to me. He was cruel to any woman close enough to be controlled. And knowing that, recognizing that his darkness wasn't personal but habitual, became the first real piece of strength returning to my body. The cold still burned my arms, but my mind began to heat up. Survival instinct isn't something you learn. It takes over when your soul realizes it's in danger. In that sharp silence, my senses sharpened. The freezer turned into a kind of acoustic chamber for truths. Every step, every whisper, every hesitation outside the door. It was like the world was telling me, listen, then decide. So I listened. The woman's voice came again, hesitant, as if repeating instructions she didn't fully believe. He said you weren't coming back, that this was better. Those words dug into my ribs like thin nails. Better for who? Better why? Better how? I knew that kind of phrasing. Derek wielded it like a tool. It's better this way, Naomi. You don't understand. I know what's best for us. All my life, he had used the word better to shrink me. Now I realized he used it to erase me. Suddenly, an old memory cut through the cold. Him telling Maya that I got lost in details, that I made everything dramatic, that I made life harder. I remembered watching my daughter absorb those words, not as opinion, but as truth. Now, I finally saw it for what it was. Not emotional abuse, preparation. He had been crafting a version of me for years, unstable, impulsive, overly emotional, unreliable. The perfect wife to go missing. The perfect mother to discredit. The perfect target for a clean crime. And now, hearing that trembling voice, I realized something even sharper. Someone else had been recruited to believe that narrative too. For a moment, despite the terror, I felt something like pity. Pity for her, the woman he was using next. But before that pity could become weakness, another sound cut through the cold. Something metallic dropped onto the counter outside. Then his voice, dense, commanding, cold enough to match the air around me. You talk too much, Selena. The way he said her name, that ownership, that warning, it was the same tone he used on me during arguments. I listened carefully. Footsteps, a sigh, and then the words that drained the remaining warmth from my chest. If she gets out now, everything falls apart for us. My pulse spiked, not from fear, from clarity. Gets out? Falls apart for us? He wasn't worried about a fight or a scene or embarrassment. He was worried about losing a plan bigger than cheating, a plan involving paperwork, insurance, witnesses, stories pre-written. In that moment, I made a choice. I needed to hear everything, not to survive the moment, but to understand the full extent of the trap he had built around me. So I stopped trying to escape, and I started listening with purpose. My fingers brushed the pocket of my apron, searching for anything to anchor myself, and found metal. The key? The same key Derek swore had been lost. The key to the internal lock. Warmth bloomed in my chest, not from the room, but from inside me. I had a way out. I had been carrying it the whole time. He never expected I would find it, and his arrogance would become my advantage. I examined the key in the dim light, its edges worn, exactly where it would turn inside the lock. He'd removed it years ago. Safety, he said. Really, control. But here it was again, back in my hand, back under my control. And that's when I heard it. Selena whispering again. Derek, you said it would be quick. I don't want her to suffer. Her voice cracked, and for a moment the cold felt heavier. Then his voice, sharp, low, annoyed. You don't know what she's capable of. Those words punched through me. That was the story he'd been telling. To her, to his mother, to my daughter, to anyone who might listen later. The story of Naomi, the unstable woman, the emotional burden, the unpredictable wife, the perfect alibi. Then, the line that changed everything. Naomi dug her own grave. I just gave her the final push. My stomach lurched, but my mind sharpened. At that moment, my survival became a 3-step plan. 1, hear everything that could become evidence. 2, memorize it without letting fear cloud it. 3, leave only when the timing gave me the upper hand. Inside the freezer, another mantra formed. Ice doesn't kill you. Rushing out blindly does. Then came the twist. Selena whispered, terrified, "Derek, why didn't you tell me she still had the internal key?" A silence heavier than the cold swallowed the room. He hadn't known. He hadn't anticipated this. I pictured his face tightening, the control slipping, the panic rising, and even freezing, trembling, fighting for each breath. I felt something electric, power. For the first time in my life, I had something he didn't, the element of surprise. The freezer wasn't my coffin. It was my vantage point. I wasn't trapped. I was gathering intel. I wasn't dying. I was transforming. Holding the key in my palm, I felt it. I would get out of this, but not just to escape, to expose him. I would walk out not as the version of Naomi he had spent decades crafting, but as the woman he feared I might become. The woman who listens, the woman who observes, the woman who plans, the woman who leaves at the right moment. And there, surrounded by ice, I made a silent vow. When I open this door, I won't be the Naomi he put in here. I'll be the one he never wanted to meet. When Selena asked, right outside the freezer, why he hadn't removed the internal key, something inside me snapped, louder than the metallic latch that had locked me in, a sound only I could hear. The sound of Derek's mask cracking. I knew, he knew, and now she knew. The silence that followed her question wasn't just silence, it was confession. Not spoken, not admitted, but undeniable. Derek didn't answer right away, and those 2 seconds, that tiny gap between question and response, revealed everything. He hadn't expected a key to exist. He hadn't expected I'd have an option. He hadn't expected I'd survive. In that microscopic pause, I understood. He had underestimated me so completely, he thought he could plan my disappearance without leaving any loose ends. But he had, thousands of them, left in every cold silence, every abruptly deleted message, every "you're overreacting," every hidden laugh in his office, every conversation with his mother dissecting my sanity like it was a hobby. And now, in the trembling breath outside this freezer door, his breathing changed, not from concern, but from fear of losing control. Men like Derek don't fear the harm they cause. They fear what happens when the harm is revealed. When he finally spoke, his voice was low, tight, like someone trying to stop a fire with bare hands. "Selena, I'll handle it. I always handle it." That was the moment I stopped being his wife in the story he was writing. I had become an obstacle. And ironically, that was also the moment I realized who I really was. Not the fragile woman he'd painted, but the woman who survived even when he calculated I wouldn't. Inside the freezer, I inhaled deeply, and something inside me sparked. A hunger for truth, a thirst for clarity, a desire to see his face when he realized I wasn't where he thought I'd be. The key was still in my hand, warm despite everything. I turned it slowly, connecting its worn edges with the inner lock. Not enough to open the door, just enough to know I could. "No rushing," I whispered inside myself. "Not yet, Naomi. Ice only kills those who panic." It became a mantra. Before you leave, understand everything. Before you act, listen to everything. And so I listened with my whole body. Selena was crying softly, a tight, breathless cry of crying, like someone realizing they had been used too. "Derek, you said you said it would be quick." Her voice splintered like thin glass. He answered with that cold irritation I knew too well. "Stop it. You don't know what she's capable of." That line, that exact line, pierced straight through me. Because that was his narrative, the story he had been building around me. Naomi, the unstable one. Naomi, the dramatic one. Naomi, the unreliable one. The perfect woman to disappear. The perfect woman no one would believe. The perfect crime wrapped in 2 decades of psychological erosion. While he said those words, something shifted inside me. Not fear, awareness, fire. For the first time, I saw him clearly. And more importantly, I saw myself clearly without him. Then, I felt his presence through the door, his hand pressed against the metal, the same hand that had held mine with empty affection in public, but none in private. His voice dropped to a near whisper. "Naomi, are you listening to me? A test, not concern." I chose to pass the test by failing it. I didn't answer, not a sound. Silence became my strategy, my shield, my weapon. "Naomi," he tried again, voice tightening, "talk to me." Nothing. My silence made him believe the freezer was doing its job. He thought his plan was succeeding. But the twist, the real twist, was that I was the one executing a plan now. Because while I stayed quiet, he kept talking. And while he talked, he gave himself away. Selena's voice came again, shaking. "I can't keep doing this, Derek. This is wrong. She's a person." He snapped. "We're not doing this now. If you want the life I promised you, you need to trust me." And that sentence, "the life I promised you," dropped into place like a puzzle piece. He wasn't just cheating, he was selling a fantasy. Buying loyalty with illusions of a future he never gave me, never intended to give anyone. My heartbeat pounded, not in panic, but in clarity. Then, the moment that sealed everything, Selena's voice, raw and honest. I can't look at her, even if she never comes back. Her breaking terrified him. He needed her obedient. "Stop talking. I'm the one in charge here." The words hit me like poison mist, because I finally saw the full truth. I wasn't his only victim. I was just the one who finally saw the full landscape of his cruelty. And that's when I did it. Quietly, deliberately. I turned the key. Click. Soft, barely audible. But to me, it was the sound of rebirth. The door stayed shut. I wouldn't leave yet. Not until the timing gave me the upper hand. But at that moment, the roles reversed. Derek thought he had trapped me inside his plan. He didn't realize he was now trapped inside mine. Because while I stayed quiet, he kept talking. And while he talked, he gave himself away. Selena's voice came again, shaking. "I can't keep doing this, Derek. This is wrong. She's a person." He snapped. "We're not doing this now. If you want the life I promised you, you need to trust me." And that sentence, "the life I promised you," dropped into place like a puzzle piece. He wasn't just cheating, he was selling a fantasy. Buying loyalty with illusions of a future he never gave me, never intended to give anyone. My heartbeat pounded, not in panic, but in clarity. Then, the moment that sealed everything, Selena's voice, raw and honest. I can't look at her, even if she never comes back. Her breaking terrified him. He needed her obedient. "Stop talking. I'm the one in charge here." The words hit me like poison mist, because I finally saw the full truth. I wasn't his only victim. I was just the one who finally saw the full landscape of his cruelty. And that's when I did it. Quietly, deliberately. I turned the key. Click. Soft, barely audible. But to me, it was the sound of rebirth. The door stayed shut. I wouldn't leave yet. Not until the timing gave me the upper hand. But at that moment, the roles reversed. Derek thought he had trapped me inside his plan. He didn't realize he was now trapped inside mine. When the lock clicked open from the inside, even though I didn't push the door, something inside me unlocked too. A crack, a shift, a new internal territory where, for the first time in years, I was the one in control. Even while trapped, even while freezing, even while vulnerable. The fear was still there, pacing along my ribs like a restless animal. The cold still burned my skin. My breath still came out in thin, invisible clouds. But the breath was mine. And fear, I learned in that moment, isn't the enemy. Fear sharpens you. Fear focuses you. Fear is a compass. I needed focus. Outside, they kept whispering. Selena was crying softly, a thin, desperate cry of someone realizing she'd been misled. Derek paced the kitchen like a man rearranging a chessboard after realizing he'd left his king exposed. And me? In that metal box, I began to build a strategy. One rule. I would not leave until I knew everything. And I wouldn't know everything until I listened long enough. Silence. I used to think silence was weakness. Now I understood silence was leverage. I pressed my forehead against the cold steel door. For a moment, the old version of me tried to resurface. The Naomi who apologized for everything, who shrank herself to keep the peace, who endured to avoid conflict. Instinct, memory, emotional habit. But I whispered inside myself, no, not anymore. Now you listen. Now you see. Now you think. Then you act. My new mantra, my rebirth. A sudden smack, Derek's hand hitting the counter, snapped me back into the present. He was angry. And when Derek got angry, the real Derek always came out. You're causing problems, Selena. I need you to cooperate. Cooperate? That word made my stomach twist. He had used it on me for years. Just cooperate, Naomi. Cooperate and we won't argue. Cooperate and everything stays calm. Cooperate, in Derek's language, meant be silent. Meant let me decide for you. Meant erase yourself so my life stays easy. And now Selena was drowning in the same quicksand. A tiny part of me felt the injustice of it. Why was I always so replaceable to him? Outside, footsteps echoed, but these weren't his. These were from the street. A car slowing, an engine shutting off. Gabriel. My whole body reacted like someone had flipped a switch inside me. He was there, right there, on the night my world was cracking open. But my second reaction was panic. If Gabriel came inside, if he called my name, if he opened the freezer, if he confronted Derek, it could trigger a disaster. Derek could walk back in at any second. I had seconds to decide. Do I call for help? Or do I keep listening? Do I survive by escape or by information? And the answer rose in me with perfect clarity. I survive by strategy. Gabriel could save me that second, but blind rescue wouldn't expose Derek, wouldn't reveal the truth, wouldn't protect me long term, wouldn't unravel the years of psychological groundwork he'd been laying. I needed to walk out, not as a rescued woman, but as a witness. Gabriel's footsteps approached the kitchen door. He knocked softly. Naomi? His voice, warm, honest, steady, hit something deep inside me. I wanted to answer, to scream, to beg for help. But if I did, I'd lose everything I'd already gathered. I swallowed my instinct and stayed silent. Seconds later, I heard the front door open again. Derek went outside. Selena followed him. Their voices drifted away, swallowed by the night. And for the first time, I had a window. But I didn't open the door. Not yet. Because escaping too soon would mean escaping blind. In that moment, a phrase formed inside me. The oppressed rush out. The survivor waits for the exact opening. So I waited. Then, a sentence that froze me more than the cold itself. She must be weak by now. You said it would be quick, Selena whispered. And Derek replied, she is. She always was. That sentence stabbed straight through the version of me that still existed before the freezer. I squeezed the key in my hand so hard, I felt the edge cut into my palm. A tiny, warm sting. A single drop of heat in all that cold. That cut proved something. Then came the word that rang through my entire skull. Insurance. Selena whispered it like a curse. And the insurance? Derek, are you sure no one will suspect? I stopped breathing. Insurance. Insurance. The word echoed like a bell inside my chest. He had signed my disappearance before he tried to make me disappear. He'd written my absence into paperwork, prepared statements, crafted a narrative, called me unstable for years so no one would question it. The freezer wasn't improvisation, it was execution. I did everything right, he said. Everyone will believe she was unstable. She always has been. She always has been. His favorite sentence. The sentence he'd trained people to repeat. The sentence he'd taught my daughter to believe. And right there, in the cold, my choice crystallized. I will not walk out of this just alive. I will walk out of this with justice on my side. Their voices faded. Their footsteps retreated. The front door slammed. A car started. And I knew this was the moment. I turned the key. The lock released. The sound, a soft click, felt louder than thunder. I pushed the door open, and the world reappeared. The kitchen was empty, cold, still. Not the cold of temperature, the cold of truth. And I stepped into that truth, not as a victim, but as someone who had just survived her own ending. When I stepped out of the freezer, stumbling, aching, half frozen and half reborn, the air in the kitchen felt different. It wasn't just oxygen. It was a battlefield. The only light came from the small lamp over the sink, casting long shadows across the table. The smell of cooling Christmas dinner mixed with the metallic scent of fear. I was alive, and Derek didn't know that yet. That was my advantage. But I also knew time was short. Men like Derek always come back to check their work. They never trust their own poison completely. The first person to see what shape I was in wasn't Derek. It was me, reflected in the microwave door. A woman half frozen, hair stuck to her forehead, hands red, eyes blazing with clarity. I barely recognized myself. Maybe that was my greatest weapon. The version of me he had locked in the freezer didn't walk out. I heard his words echoing in my memory. She was always weak. It's better this way. She's not coming back. The irony, I didn't just come back. I came back awake. On the table was his open folder, as if fate itself had placed it there. Documents, signatures, insurance policies, paragraphs describing my unexpected but consistent emotional instability. My emotional history. He had already written my obituary. He had erased me on paper before trying to erase me in life. I held the documents as if they were bones from a long-dead truth finally dug up. And then I heard it. The car outside. Derek was back. My pulse raced, but not in fear, in preparation. Now it's my turn, I thought. Now it's my door. I walked into the living room, but I didn't hide. I wanted to be seen. I wanted him to feel it. I wanted to watch his face when he realized the ghost he thought he'd frozen was standing there, breathing, steady, staring right back. The doorknob turned. The front door opened. And there it was, a moment I will never forget. Derek's face when he saw me alive. A millisecond of pure horror. His eyebrow lifted a fraction. His mouth opened, but no sound came out. His whole body froze in the doorway. Selena walked in behind him, and when she saw me, she gasped. "Oh my God! Shut up!" he snapped without taking his eyes off me. I inhaled deeply. The calm inside me felt newly forged, born in that freezer. "You got out," he said, like he was narrating something unreal. I did. My voice was low, steady, a tone he'd never heard from me. He stepped forward. I stepped back, not out of fear, but out of control. Naomi, this isn't what you think. You misunderstood. I lifted my hand. He stopped. The power of that gesture hit me like a wave. Don't, I said. Don't rewrite the story now. He blinked, startled. He had never heard steel in my voice. Behind him, Selena started crying again. I didn't mean, Derek, I didn't. Her voice broke. He turned to her with irritation, not compassion. Selena, please, don't make this worse. Look at that. Even in the middle of a crime, he still spoke like a man annoyed by incompetent employees. I stepped forward, toward both of them. I raised my phone, screen on, recording app open. I heard everything. His eyes widened. Everything what? The insurance, the plan, the story you rehearsed, the lies you told her, the lies you told everyone. She's always been unstable. All of it. Selena covered her mouth. Derek paled. And then, the first twist he didn't see coming. I recorded it. The moment he understood, the mask fell completely. No more charm, no more control. Just a panicked man trying to salvage himself. You can't use that, Naomi. You're emotional. You don't know what you heard. I heard perfectly. This will destroy our family. You destroyed our family when you closed that freezer door. His jaw clenched. That vein in his neck pulsed the way it always did when he felt power slipping. Naomi, if you send that to anyone, it's over. I know. Silence engulfed the room, a heavy, living silence. And inside it, the catharsis finally came. I said everything I had swallowed for 20 years. Not in screams, not in hysteria, in truth. I gave you 20 years of my life. 20 years being your bridge, your base, your excuse, your emotional punching bag. I endured your mother calling me unstable. I endured our daughter looking at me like I was the problem. I endured your coldness while I carried this house on my back. And even then, you tried to bury me in the ice. My voice didn't break. It solidified. But I came back, Derek. And now you're the one frozen in your own lie. Selena sobbed behind him. You told me she wouldn't. You told me she wouldn't get out. Her voice was barely human. He spun toward her, frantic. Selena, I said that in the heat. In the heat, I cut in. You tried to kill me in a freezer. The truth hit the air like steam bursting from a crack in the ground. And then, second twist, the one he never imagined. Selena broke. I'm telling the truth, she sobbed. I'm not going with you. I won't carry this. Derek looked at her like she'd stabbed him. He looked at me like he finally saw a threat. He understood. He'd lost control, lost his narrative, lost the obedient mistress, lost the silent wife, lost the plan, lost the future he'd written in cold ink. I lifted my phone. If you take one more step toward me, this goes to the police, and to your mother, and to Maya. He stopped. And for the first time in our entire marriage, Derek was afraid of me. Of me, the woman he had tried to erase. I walked past him without touching him, walked past him like passing a dead emotional body. And as I closed the door behind me, I felt something profound. The freezer was the place he tried to kill me, but it was also the place where I was reborn. When I closed the door behind me, leaving Derek and Selena on the other side, each sinking into their own kind of cold, the first thing I felt wasn't triumph. It was emptiness. A huge, heavy emptiness, like the floor of my old life had been yanked out and I was still suspended in midair, unsure where I'd land. I didn't become a heroine in 5 minutes. I didn't feel powerful nonstop. I felt tired. Tired from 20 years of carrying everything alone. Tired of trying to prove my worth to people who refused to see me. tired even of the idea of rebuilding. But beneath that exhaustion was something new, quiet, steady. From here on, if I suffer, it won't be because someone else decided for me. It will be because I chose to fight for my life. I sat down at the kitchen table, phone in one hand, the folder of documents in the other. My body caved in, but my mind replayed everything. The freezer, the door clicking shut, the woman's voice, the insurance, the panic on Derek's face when he saw me alive. And underneath all of that pulsed a single truth. I'm not going to keep dying a little every day to protect someone else's image. That was my new boundary. Then I remembered Gabriel. He had been there. He had seen the house. He had felt the shift. I picked up the phone and called. "Naomi?" He answered immediately. "Can you come back?" I asked, and my voice trembled. "Right now, please." This time, I didn't send him away. This time, I asked for help. Within minutes, I heard his car again. When he stepped into the house and saw me, hunched over the table, freezer still ajar in the background, his eyes filled with a kind of pain Derek had never shown me. Pain for me, not for himself. "Talk," he said, pulling out a chair. "I'm here." And I talked. I told him everything. The freezer, the plan, the voice, the insurance, the recording, the lies he'd rehearsed for years, the words that tried to turn me into a ghost even before he locked that door. As I spoke, I trembled, not from fear, but from release. It was like removing splinters I had carried under my skin for decades. When I finished, Gabriel rubbed his face with both hands and said, "Naomi, this isn't just cruelty. This is a crime. You can't stay here, not one more night." Crime. That word struck me in a strange way. I knew what Derek had done, but hearing it named by someone else gave it weight, the kind of weight that makes the world shift into place. "And Maya?" I asked, my voice cracking. "If I leave, he'll twist her even more against me." Gabriel held my hand. "He already has, but that's not on you. What you can do now is stay alive, steady, strong. So when her world cracks someday, and it will, you're still standing. She'll see him eventually. It just won't be today." And in that moment, I understood that justice doesn't come as one big explosion. It comes in layers. The justice of the law, the justice inside yourself, the justice of time, which always strips the mask off people like Derek. That night, with Gabriel's help, I packed a few essentials: documents, clothes, medications, photos. I left the house I'd built with my own hands. I didn't take everything. I took what mattered most: proof of what he did, and the decision to never return as his version of me. Tasha took me in, arms wide open, with that fierce blend of anger and tenderness only real friends have. "You did what you had to do," she said. "The rest, we handle piece by piece." The next morning, I sat in a police station. Repeating everything felt like undergoing surgery without anesthesia. But I answered. I stayed calm. I signed the report. I told the truth. People asked questions like, "Why didn't you see it earlier? Why didn't you leave sooner?" Only those who've lived inside slow, daily cold understand. You don't notice when winter becomes deadly. I left the station with a police report and instructions to request a restraining order. Then I met with a family attorney. He examined the documents, watched the recording, and said, "You have a lot here. This will be a long fight, but you are not unarmed." For the first time ever, someone told me that. Meanwhile, Derek began his counterattack. Texts, missed calls, long, guilt-soaked voice messages. "You're breaking our family. Think about Maya. You've always exaggerated, Naomi. We can fix this privately. If you push this, you'll look unstable." I listened once, then blocked him. People who insist on handling things privately, the social worker told me, are usually the ones who don't want witnesses. That sentence became another anchor. And then, Maya, my daughter. When she found out I'd left and filed a report, she called me furious. How could you? Dad said you want to ruin him. He said you're unstable, that you're making all this up for attention. The same script he used on me, now coming out of her mouth. It hurt. It burned. But I stayed steady. Maya, I know right now you believe him. One day, I hope you'll give yourself a chance to hear my side. I will be here, but I'm not putting myself back in the freezer, emotionally or literally, to fit the version he created for you. She cried. She yelled. She hung up. I cried too, but I didn't go back. The real rebuilding wasn't financial or logistical. It was internal. I had to relearn things so basic they felt foreign. That I can say no, that I can rest, that I don't have to earn kindness, that cooking can be for pleasure, not for approval, that quiet isn't danger. Sometimes it's peace. Little by little, justice showed up. People stepping away from Derek after hearing the recording, admiration turning into suspicion, his perfectly rehearsed crazy wife story cracking, insurance agents asking questions, his frustration growing as the world stopped nodding along. This wasn't a movie ending. There were no police cars and flashing lights. But something far more important happened. I stopped being a co-signer of his lie. And as months passed, I realized the real rebuilding wasn't about bringing Derek down. It was about bringing myself back up. Today, my life is quieter, simpler, cleaner. Silence no longer feels like punishment. It feels like rest. I drink my morning coffee without bracing for footsteps and criticism. I decorate my small place for Christmas without someone calling it too much. I pray not for someone else to change, but for strength not to abandon myself again. Are there still cold days inside me? Yes. But now I know, when the cold comes, it isn't because someone shut a door on me. It's because life is hard. And on those days, I turn on a warm light, make some tea, watch something comforting, listen to women's stories, and remind myself, I'm not crazy. I was just tired of being disrespected. And one day, long ago, I finally turned the lock from the inside. Today, when I think back to that night, the cold, the door shutting, the unfamiliar voice, the way my heart beat like it was fighting death itself, I realized the freezer wasn't the worst place I've ever been. The worst place was the silence before it. The silence I learned to swallow. The silence I mistook for peace. The silence I built my life around because I thought being quiet meant being loved. The silence that convinced me to accept less and less until I barely recognized myself. The freezer was only the last page of a story I should have stopped reading long before. But it was also the first chapter of another. Sometimes I think God didn't put me in there to punish me, but to wake me up. Inside that ice, I saw, for the first time, the real outline of the woman I had become. Exhausted, but alive. Wounded, but still fighting. Invisible, but whole. Emotionally hunted, but still capable of rebirth. And I did rebirth myself. Not overnight, not with fireworks, not with some dramatic Hollywood moment. I rebuilt myself the most human way possible, day by day, step by shaky step, crying, collapsing, rising, stumbling, trying again. I once believed freedom looked like something grand, like a single explosive moment of courage. But real freedom? Real freedom smells like quiet morning coffee, like a bed you made for yourself, like a closet where you choose what to wear without fear of someone's comments. It feels like breathing without shrinking first. The hardest part of leaving Derek wasn't reporting him, wasn't packing bags, wasn't facing his mother or the woman he manipulated. The hardest part was learning to exist without performing value every minute of the day. Women like us are taught to live for others, to serve, to accommodate, to carry the emotional load of a whole household quietly, to keep families together at the cost of our own mental health, to shrink ourselves so others can feel bigger. One day, whether it's in a freezer, or a bathroom crying on the floor, or a dark living room staring at nothing, you realize you've been dying slowly just to keep someone else's comfort alive. And that realization can be a beginning. I once feared that losing Derek meant losing my family. But now I know, losing someone who's been killing you from the inside isn't loss, it's rescue. And about Maya, I stopped trying to control her, stopped begging for her love, stopped trying to prove I was the good mom. Kids grow, eyes mature, masks slip, and truth, cold, bright, burning truth, always finds a way out. One day, she'll see him for who he is, not because I force it, but because truth always rises. If she comes to me, not to apologize, but simply to see me as human, I'll be here, standing, whole, warm. Because the best gift I can give my daughter isn't a perfect mother. It's a mother who survived, a mother who is here. Today, my life looks nothing like before. I wake up early, make my own coffee, write down my tiny victories, and sometimes my defeats too. I rediscovered the joy of cooking for myself, not for approval. I even sing sometimes while stirring a pot, something I never did in that house. I wasn't light enough to sing back then. I was too busy carrying everything. I used to think being a woman meant holding up everyone else. Now I know, being a woman means knowing when to put it all down. And if you are hearing this story right now, maybe with tears in your eyes, or a tightness in your chest, or memories surfacing you tried to bury, I want to tell you something with all the honesty in me. You're not crazy. You're not alone. And you don't deserve anyone's ice. Your pain is real. Your exhaustion is real. The unfairness you've normalized is real. The loneliness you hide is real. And still, you are alive, breathing, holding your own key, whether you know it or not. My key was a freezer. Yours might look different, but the truth is the same. You always had the key, always. You just needed the courage to turn it. And if no one has told you this today, I will. You deserve warmth. You deserve peace. You deserve to be seen. And you deserve a life where no one else controls your inner door. Thank you for listening to my story. If it touched your heart, leave your like and your comment. Your voice matters, here and in the world.